Alright, welcome back to the Supercoach Snuff channel. In this video we're going to look at our tops, chops, traps and slaps for NRL Fantasy in round 9 of the 2024 season. So how it works for those that are new to the concept or new to the channel is if we've got a pick that we like as a trading option that's quite good, well we give that the tops. If there's a trade out option that we think is a good idea too, we give it the chop. If we have a trading option that we're not so convinced on, well, it's probably a trap. And if we've got a trade out option that we probably shouldn't be trading out of our teams and holding on to, well, we're going to give ourselves a slap. So we'll go through the picks this week. Lots of great picks, if I'm being completely honest. Not too many dud picks. So there's a few controversial ones here, but we'll definitely address them as we go through. So starting at hooker, so the tops pick this week, Jaden Brayley. So playing 80 minutes now as a hooker, which is something he has done previously before his unfortunate injury run that he's had. Probably, not deep enough into his recovery to sort of be in the considerations for Origin. And the Knights do have sneaky good bye coverage. They don't play round 16, but they do cover the other sort of 5 bigger bye rounds. So if you're looking for a slightly more value option over, say, a Marshall King, for example, I think Jaden Brayley is a great pick. On the chopping block, I've gone with Joey Lussick, so a reduction in minutes. Probably peaked in price last week. On the bye this week, so obviously not much use to our teams in the immediate short term. So I think a good week to get out of that pick if you've still got him in your squad. The trap this week, I've gone with Harry Grant. Obviously the best hooker in NRL Fantasy and probably in NRL, if we're being honest. Not really a trap, but I guess we just need to consider that he's not playing Origin. So it's still a few weeks away, so there probably is an argument to still bring him in if you want to bring him in. But I guess we've got to start making, the advanced calculations on if we bring in a player that's going to be missing through Origin, is he going to outscore a player who might score less per week, but will play more weeks through that Origin period? Because again, we're looking for the overall points gain. Unless I guess you're playing a head-to-head style of game where you're only worried about beating your mates on a given week, you might not play the Origin bye rounds. That makes life a lot easier. Bring in all the Origin guns in that case. And the slap this week is Api Coruscant. So essentially we don't want to trade out a player just because they've played Penrith. Between Penrith and the Storm, they're going to break a lot of great fantasy players. And I say break, it's for 1 week only. He'll bounce back. He's got the Dogs this week, who admittedly have got a better defence, but they could potentially find a way to get through there. That's the Tigers. Hopefully not as a Dogs fan, but you can hang on to Api Coruscant. The mids this week, the tops pick, I've gone with Max Plath, so isn't exactly a cheapie anymore. Wasn't exactly a cheapie to start with, to be fair. In fantasy, he was a bit more expensive than in Supercoach. However, offers awesome minutes in the middle. His work rate's really good. Origin bye coverage is good. Dual position's also handy. Can cover the halves if need be. So yeah, really solid player to have in your fantasy team. On the chopping block, we've gone with Terrell May. So again, great work rate, not great minutes, unfortunately. That's the difference between Plath and Terrell May. So I think, in the middle, probably after the halves, it's the highest scoring position. So we can't really afford to have someone who's just not getting the minutes in there. The trap this week, I've gone with Jamin Jolliffe. So he was one that sort of sprung to mind straight away, and I thought, oh, that's weird. He's never really been that relevant. But when I looked into it, he's obviously taking a lot of the workload that Tino Fa'amausili would have taken up obviously, if he was still playing and not injured. Um, but I think the only reason I've put him as a trap is, first of all, he doesn't really cover the round 13 bye. Um, he's I guess hasn't got a lot of value. He's probably at or about his peak price, so you are paying top dollar for his services. And I guess if the form that he's in, he could be a sneaky shout for the Queensland team, given that there's a few injuries there. So I think that, there's probably a couple of question marks, but particularly like I said, he's peaked in value. So I don't know if there's any point to bringing in a guy like Jamin Jolliffe. And Morgan Smithies I've got as the slap. So I guess, like we said, with Jamin Jolliffe, doesn't cover Origin. The first Origin could be a chance of playing in it. But Morgan Smithies is the opposite. Plays round 13 and 14. Doesn't play Origin because he's from England. So I don't think we give up on that pick just because the Raiders had a bad week. On the edge, I've got the top pick as being Angus Crichton. It's starting to look at this pick more as a keeper type pick. Obviously, not a lot of value given his current price point. But if he keeps playing the way he is, playing 80 minutes, and scoring tries, and basically like the Angus of old, um, he's definitely one we can bring in and lock away for the season. On the chopping block, I've gone with Sean Lane. So just has sort of been middling all season at that mid-range price point. Hasn't really offered a lot of value. So yeah, he's not playing this week. Good time as any to give him the chop. The trap, I've gone with David Feeder. So this is like, I guess, the same thing I said for Harry Grant. You can go again. You know, he's a keeper option. Ridiculous freak in terms of playing ability and fantasy scoring. Despite not playing big minutes, he's done it before. He's come off the bench and scored well. Um, but he will play Origin, So again, we're just weighing it up. If I sort of pair him with Crichton, I think Crichton will outscore for Feeder, provided Angus doesn't make a return to the New South Wales side. And the slap, we've gone with Jermaine Hopgood, so probably the supreme edge option given his dual position, big minute lock forward, all the stuff we love from fantasy players. But just because he's having the week off doesn't mean you trade him out. Into the halves, and so the top pick I've got this week is KO Weeks. So obviously filling in for Jamal Fogarty for the at least the short term, and I guess took the leadership in terms of the dominant half role. So I guess that's why we've also got the chopping block is Ethan Strange. It just comes down to, I guess, in fantasy, there's a lot more, I guess, opportunity for points through things like kick meters. And so if KO Weeks has taken that role, well, then obviously at his cheaper price, he is the one to get on. And we could probably trade out Ethan Strange. I know a few people were talking about in the preseason game that it was Strange that was the dominant playmaker, and that may sort of revert after the bye, and they're suggesting to hold Ethan Strange. I wouldn't begrudge anyone who does hold Ethan Strange, but I just think, given he has got a bit of value about him, that it is one we can move on from. The trap this week is Jai Gray. So I guess probably more of a super coach pick, if I'm being honest. I might have got a bit lazy with this one. But did see that a few people were still bringing him in. But he's only got one more week before the troll returns. And then we probably won't see him again for a good while unless, the troll is missing again for whatever reason. And saying that, they do have a new coach, so anything could happen. But I guess I'd want to see first before I committed to such a move. So I wouldn't bring in Jai Gray, and I wouldn't trade out Sean Johnson. So I saw a few people trading him out. I'm guessing maybe trying to get Nico Hines in, who I actually talked about in the Supercoach version of this video as being a trap, given they do have fixtures against the Storm and Penrith in the near future. So if you've got SJ, I would hold. I wouldn't trade him out to bring in a Nico Hines at this point of the season, at least. into the centres, and the tops pick this week is Ruben Garrick. So um, obviously scored well on the weekend. His HIA affected score will be out of his rolling average now, so has a really nice break even. Um, so if you did want to bring Garrick in, this is the week to do it. Just note he doesn't play the round 13 bye, so provided you're covered for that week, I think he is the best option to trade in. On the chopping block, I've got James Schiller, so has done his job for us, made a heap of cash. But Albert Hopewadi is back, and also Nick Cottridge has overtaken him in the sort of, I guess, pecking order there at the Raiders. So I think, yeah, we can cut James Schiller and use that money elsewhere. Joe Manu as the trap, so still people bringing him in. Seems a bit odd just given that he has peaked in price. You're paying top dollar. And there is still a few weeks until Origin where his value really does rise when he's filling in at fullback for James Tedesco. Um, so yeah, so I just hold off. Obviously, if you want a premium centre option this week, just get Ruben Garrick. It's pretty simple. And then you can pair him up with Joey Manu in round 13. And the slap this week, I've gone with Paul Alamotti. Obviously not playing this week, so if you do need a number, it probably makes sense to trade him out. But you'd think with Brian To'o a shoe in for Origin, or at least in my opinion, that's there'll be a spot on the wing, and it looks like Alamotti is the next man up in that back line um, for the Panthers. So if you can hold him, I think he still offers a bit of value going forward. Um, but if you need to, okay, I can understand you trading out this week. And the wing fullbacks to finish. So the tops pick this week, once again, I've gone with David Armstrong. So I brought him in last week. Um, we had the sort of three cheapies we were looking at. There was himself, KO Weeks, and Ethan Sanders from the Eels was the other one. And Armstrong was the top scorer, so that was a good win for us. And yeah, there's a bit of talk about he might not be the first choice to replace Kalen Ponga, but the fact that he's got the job, if he can nail it down, wouldn't make sense to change him out after a couple of good games. So I think we can bring him in and hope that he really locks down that spot that he could hold for the next few months. On the chopping block, we've got Tom Chester, so it looks like a serious sort of hamstring injury. So they've said 4 weeks, but hamstrings are funny like that; they can take forever. So get rid of Tom Chester. A bit sad. I did have him as a great option through the first Origin sort of period, but now have to pivot and look elsewhere. Jacob Gagai I've got on the trap list, and so I did have him as the best buy in the Super Coach video, so this might be a bit confusing. But I guess the difference with fantasy is he has already had 2 price rises, and this is when that job security becomes a bigger risk because you do want him as a cheapie to make money, but I guess there is that risk in a couple of weeks when Tane Milne and Alex Johnson come back that he finds himself out of the team and we haven't really made that much cash out of him. So I think for that reason, I would avoid bringing in Jacob Gagai, just as similar as I would avoid trading out Chevy Stewart. And it comes down to, again, he hasn't played enough games to really generate enough value to justify trading him back out. Um, so hopefully, he has a couple of weeks and can find his way back in time for round 13. They have talked highly about him being, a big part of the future at the club. So hopefully they find a way to get him back in and playing some games. Um, if not, obviously we can trade at round 13 if we need the number, but I don't think it's one we need to panic on because we're just not going to get any value out of doing so. So that's the fantasy tops, chops, traps, and slaps done for round 9 of the 2024 season. Obviously, if you've got any comments or thoughts around these decisions, feel free to add them below this video. Give us a like if you enjoy this sort of analysis. Subscribe for all the fantasy sports content on this channel. And other than that, we'll catch you in the next one.